in this showcase to see a wonderful gentleman, very humble, very dynamic. He has been winning contests, and since 1993, he went to US in 1993. He has gone so many times. In 2008, he was the first runner-up. And we heard from sideline that he was almost a champion, but because the first place winner was a lady who was suffering a very serious illness, so they gave it to her. What do you call the singer? Yeah. She's a local, colored lady, and she was very ill. But for attempt she gave. But honestly, this gentleman, I'm not saying it because he's here, because I went there and I found out people say he was very good. So we are very fortunate. Let's all put our hands together and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Loghandran Krishnasamy!
So explosive stuff. I was head of discipline at Bank Bhumi. In a 9,000 employee organization, 20 will be mentally off. Yes. Some of them, when the sister dies, they shout at the ATM machine. And you have to call them to human resource. Sit outside for a while, and they start cutting their hair. One incident of a death can trigger a person to a downward devolving moment. You would be there one day if you don't watch it. And in one particular incident, I remember the ward number 5, University Hospital, psychiatric ward. There was one lady whom I know personally, and she had an argument with her husband. And because of one argument, she refused to talk. She became numb, emotionally numb. What should you ought to do when you fight with your spouse? You must talk within 3 days. The Muslims have it right. You must talk within 3 days. You ought to do it. If you don't talk, you become emotionally numb. And you know what happened later? Visitors came to the house and left. She took antiseptic Dettol to wipe the chair. This was too much. And the final straw that broke the camel's back. She told the children, "No more drinking from the glass." Then how can we drink? Because the glass will get dirty. So what can you do? You have to send them to ward number 5, University Hospital, for 6 months to desensitize the person. 6 months. You cannot go home. One incident can take you down, and it can affect your family. And I must tell you, if I was in this particular situation, and if I had a piece of paper, if I were to crush it, and if I want to throw it, if there is a dustbin, I can put it there. If there's no dustbin, I have to go out and look for a dustbin. If I can't find a dustbin, I ought to put it in my pocket, go home and throw it. But if nobody is watching, I can do the other thing. I can quietly throw it here and justify. After all, tomorrow there will be a cleaner lady coming to clean. Imagine, if you do not do what you ought to do, or you do something contrary to what you do, you are self-betraying yourself. And then you justify by saying, okay, this lady will come and clean tomorrow. When you justify, it becomes self-deception. And once it becomes a self-deception, you set up a pattern. In everything you do, what you ought to do, you do it contrary. And then you justify, and you will devolve. And once you devolve, you affect your family, your children, your spouse. It can especially affect your children. And here's one case of a boy, 10 years old. He told my son this incident. My father is a bit strange, How is your father? Oh, very nice, because I am the father and somebody is comparing to me. His father is a bit slightly off. What caused him to be like that? Imagine this 10-year-old boy goes to a supermarket and he tells his Papa, the toy car is 25 ringgit. I've got only 10 ringgit in my pocket. Can you lend me 15 ringgit so that when I go home I ask Mummy to lend you the money or give you the money? He said, no. He's what you call a tight wad. A tight wad. A person who's very strict with his money and also anal. You know what is anal? Anal retentive. That means if you come across bosses like that, they check on everything until you get annoyed. And he was checking everything. And he told the son, I will not lend you the money until mommy give me the set of accounts for the groceries. Until I get the set of accounts, I want to know where the money has gone, and only then I'll give the money to your mother, and your mother can give you the money. Do you know what is anal retentive? Anal comes from the word anus. What ought to happen early morning? When you go to the toilet, you're supposed to let it go. Some people retain it. Don't be surprised. Some Toastmasters actually told me they retain it for 5 days. Why? Because the toilet is all full. I can't go to the toilet in the morning. 3 people are using the toilet. And they very proudly say, I'm holding it for 5 days. I release it on Saturday. When it's so easy and free and light on a Saturday. And they set up patterns. Imagine how a person would look like if you retain it for 5 days. You've got a constipated face. And they set up patterns. When the son wanted to go to college, he said, I want 5,000 ringgit. The father said, no way, I'm going to give you 5,000 ringgit to go to college. And you know what the son said? I'm going to the court to remove your name from my identity card. That's very proud and brave of the boy, to remove the father's name. Actually, you can't do it. So the father decided to give 5,000. After that, the stepfather continued the financing. And few years later, this man died, leaving behind 900,000 for the son to enjoy. And what do you think the son would have done with it? He will P-A-R-T. Why? Because he wants to enjoy. He lost all the enjoyment when he was a kid. And the father, he had one incident with a girl and he broke off. Because of that, it caused this problem. Just because of one incident. So I dare ask you, ladies and gentlemen, I am sure you have all had one incident that caused you a problem, and what you ought to do, you didn't do. Like what Stephen mentioned just now. What you ought to do, you didn't do. And then you later justify it. And then you go into self-deception, and then you devolve, and then your family, your children get affected in the process. And sometimes the entire devolving will end up in you becoming systemic in what you're doing. 2 teachers, one staying in Kuantan, one staying in Malacca, every Fridays they come back to KL. On every Monday they apply for MC so they can spend one more day together. And then 5 years later they were transferred back to KL. Every Monday they automatically fall sick. Imagine you set a pattern like that. You go devolving. It is very dangerous, ladies and gentlemen. Because one incident, if you don't catch yourself, either you're evolving or devolving. Do a reality check. I'm sure you would have been offended by someone. I have been offended so many times. I caught myself and stopped myself from devolving. If you don't catch yourself, you don't do a reality check, you will go down the drain and you will take your entire family with you. Innocent children and your wife together with you. So ladies and gentlemen, my message is this. I'm sure you would have come to a point where you have been offended. One inciting incident can trigger a devolving moment. So check yourself and evolve. Over to you.